So we've looked at our search results. Now we're going to look at the individual record. Before we do, are there any questions? We're going to get through the individual record, and then we're going to take a 5 to 10 minute break. I haven't decided yet, before we come back to the next section after that. Okay, let's go ahead and move on to the individual record. So we have selected something from our search results. And it brings us to this individual record. Now, I do want to make clear, these search results, that search can happen in the OPAC, and it looks very similar at this point, but we're talking about searching within the client, because that's where, of course, you're going to be doing your work, unless you're doing reference work, but we're here for copy cataloging. So when we get into the individual record, the first thing that we are going to see is the splash. I like to think of above the fold and below the fold within here. So everything that is including the search the catalog, advanced search, browse the catalog, everything that is below that is generally exactly what you would see in the OPAC. There are some differences, but generally what you see in the OPAC. And everything above that is where you're going to be doing work, learning more about that title. Is it appropriate to add holdings? Do I need to do some editing with either call numbers or templates or whatever? We're going to take a look at these different views in here, but we'll look at the individual record first. This is our splash, and the splash includes the image, the item artwork. If it's in there, we're becoming very good at having those things in there, but there are some things that still aren't. You can see the number of available copies and holds, the format, if there happens to be series information, other formats, and anything that is kind of green and underlined is a hyperlink, and that's going to either perform another search for you. If you were to click the series information in Forbidden Library, it would search for anything that has that series information. Or you could view the other formats, and it would do a search for those formats. Or it may take you to another individual record. And then over on the right-hand side, you have some actions over there: place holds, add to basket, add to my list, etc. One of my favorite things that is not really new, but something I was so happy when it was new, is that permalink button over there, which is wonderful if we want to share access to a specific individual record, in my opinion. I used it a lot when I was creating newsletters and lists back in the day. So we have the splash. The next thing that we have as we scroll down that page is we have the holdings for that. And so we see this list of locations, as well as the call numbers, the barcodes, the shelving location, which is within the location, and then some more information about that item. One of the things that is different here than what you would see in the OPAC is that when we're looking at holdable, you see we have item hold and call number hold. Patrons, when they're looking at the public side of the catalog, they're looking through the OPAC, they have the ability to place holds at title level. So generally, if your library has something, they place a hold. It's going to ask you to pull your copy first, but they can't say, I want this specific item. You can actually say, I want the item for this patron or for myself or whatever that has this barcode. And so you could do an item hold, or if you had multiple items with the same call number, and that gets a little nuanced too. They call it a call number. It could be a title, well, not a title hold, a volume hold. But you can do that. Patrons can't do that. That is one thing that is different in here. The other thing is the view button under barcode, which we'll talk about that a little bit more later on as well. Then if you continue scrolling down, you'll get to the description of that item, of that record. And all of the information that is here comes directly from the MARC record or the bibliographic record. It looks different. You don't see all of the tags that are on the side there. You don't see the subfields, but the content of that MARC record now is rendered here in the description. And if you look at the subject area there, you can see there are multiple subjects, and you can see that they are hyperlinked. And those hyperlinks then will perform more searches in case somebody was looking at this specific item and they're like, well, I would also like to look at more things that have magic as an authorized heading, an authorized subject in there, and they'd click on that and it would perform a search. Unfortunately, at this point, by just hyperlinking, you can of course only pick one hyperlink at a time, and so you couldn't pick multiple subjects from here. You can, however, do subject searches from the advanced search screen, and you could have multiple subjects in there to do a more defined search based on subjects. And then below that, you can see that we have these four, they're called drawers. We call them drawers here in Evergreen, Indiana. And they are some additional content we'll look at. So in this case, we're looking at another individual record. In this case, you see we have both the splash and then we have the local holdings that are just below that. And we're going to take a look at the additional content for this book, Go Tell It on the Mountain by James Baldwin. While these look like drawers, they're links. And so if you click on one of them, the first one here is awards, reviews, and suggested reads. This has changed pretty significantly in the past year or so. I know this is a very small representation of that screen. I would encourage you to go in and take a look at some of your holdings if you have not before. This content is provided through Novelist, which is a service that we pay for to add additional content into the catalog. And so you can see that, well, you may not be able to see, but within this tab, we have similar titles, we have some similar authors, some more subjects, genre information, and important for a lot of juvenile materials, we also have the Lexile and the accelerated number and the ability to search for similar levels within this little interface here. And then there are some more things, Goodreads reviews and more. There's a ton of content in this little area. Then we also have in here, and there's no possible way you can read that, that is an excerpt from this actual title under the additional content, in the additional content drawer. And there are some options in there depending on what's available for the title. There may be a table of contents for the title. There may be the introduction. In some cases, there may be an entire chapter of the book or that or whatever that you can read. So a lot of value added content there. The next drawer down there is the shelf browser. And when you're using that, I highly recommend, well, it depends on your actual, what you're trying to accomplish. But if you are actually wanting to have that experience of browsing a shelf, you're going to need to define your location. In this case, I selected Zionsville Public Library, and I wanted to browse the shelf for those items that were there next to, on either side of Go Tell It on the Mountain. So what you'll see in this shelf browse is your item right there in the middle, and then you will see the things that come after it and the things that come before it to check that out. And then we have, even further down here, we have our MARC record. People who don't catalog generally don't know how valuable it is to have the MARC record exposed to the public. This is, in my opinion, one of the best, most giving things that a library can do for the spread of information, for the sharing of information. There are a lot of library systems, integrated library systems, the software, that do not expose the MARC record because, I mean, generally it is an internal tool that we use that allows us to categorize, organize our stuff, and it makes it accessible through the search and those things. And most patrons aren't really interested in it. It looks like a bunch of code. But for those people who are in library school, for those people who are working in libraries that maybe aren't part of a large consortium, but they're trying to build their own catalog or learn more about these things, having them exposed is just an invaluable tool, and I'm very proud of Evergreen for doing that. It's also a great way for you to both learn and teach people about this if you have the opportunity.